Hi. So here's the video recording for today's class, which is about simple versus compound sentence parts of a sentence. Okay, so we know the different parts of a sentence. The different parts of the sentence are the subject, the predicate, and then some objects, direct objects, indirect objects, objects of the preposition. These parts of the sentence can be either simple or compound. So by simple, we mean that the part has just one piece to it. Simple means just one piece, one part. So a subject in a sentence is made up of just one thing, one person or place or thing. Or an object in a sentence is just one person or place or thing. Or a predicate is just one action. All right? For example, if I say, Alicia went to the store. What's the subject? Who or what is doing something? Alicia. So that's a simple subject because it just has one part. But parts of the sentence can also be compound. And we've seen in other grammar things that compound means more than one in terms of grammar. Adding more than one thing together. So if the subject of a sentence, for example, had more than one part to it, so Alicia and her sister went to the store. Now the subject of the sentence has two pieces, two parts. Okay? So we say it's compound. So the same thing can happen with predicates, direct objects, and indirect objects, all the different parts of the sentence. Now, why does this matter? Who cares? When we are analyzing groups of words to see if they are complete, well-written sentences or not, we have to be able to find the subject and the predicate, particularly, not objects so much, but the subject and the predicate. If we don't know or recognize that the subject or the predicate could be compound, then we may be confused as we're looking for subjects and predicates in groups of words that we're analyzing. Okay, so let's look at some examples. You should have printed out or be looking at the handout for today. It's called Parts of a Sentence, Simple versus Compound Parts. Okay, so take a look at the first example here, which I've used already. It says a compound subject is made up of two or more subjects that share the same predicate. So the two parts are doing the same thing. They're sharing the same predicate. The subjects are joined by a conjunction like and or, generally and or. So if I say, Alicia and her sister walked to the movie theater, what's the subject in this sentence? Who or what is doing something? It's Alicia and her sister. So that's the subject. But instead of having just one part to it, it has two parts, Alicia and sister. So it's a compound subject. What did Alicia and her sister do? They walked. So walked is the predicate here, and there's just one part to it. So it's a simple predicate. So this sentence has a compound subject and a simple predicate. Look at the next example. A compound predicate is two or more predicates that share the same subject. So a simple subject does two things. What does the subject do? It does two different things. So the predicates are joined by and or, as usual. So we say Alicia walked to the movie theater and bought a ticket. So who or what is doing something in this sentence? Alicia. So that's the subject. There's just one part to it, so it's a simple subject. And the simple subject is doing two things. She walked and she bought. So there are two parts to the predicate. Alicia walked to the movie theater and bought a ticket. So this sentence has a simple subject and a compound predicate. Okay, so this same thing, being simple or compound, can happen with objects too. Direct objects, indirect objects, objects of the preposition. So take a look at the next example down. A girl handed me some flowers and candy. So, a girl handed me some flowers and candy. What's the subject in this sentence? Who or what is doing something? It's the girl. What did the girl do? What's the predicate? What did the subject do? That'll be the predicate. She handed. Now, we've seen in previous lessons that we can find a possible direct object by saying the subject, saying the predicate, and asking what. If there's an answer to what, that might be a direct object. So say the subject, girl, say the predicate, handed. Girl handed what? Flowers and candy. So this is a direct object in the sentence, but it has two parts to it, flowers and candy. If I just said, a girl handed me some flowers, flowers would be the direct object, and it would be a simple direct object, just one part to it. But in this case, the direct object is compound. It has two parts, flowers and candy. Or the compound, an indirect object can also be compound. Look at the next sentence. A girl handed my mother and me some flowers. So who or what is doing something here? The girl, that's the subject. What's the subject doing? What did the girl do? She handed, that's the predicate. If there's a direct object, we find it by saying the subject, saying the predicate, asking where, what. Girl handed what? In this case, flowers. So flowers is a direct object in this sentence. Notice each of those, girl, handed, and flower, there's only one part to each of those. So that's a simple subject, a simple predicate, a simple direct object. But then if we look for an indirect object, remember, we've practiced finding indirect objects by saying the subject, saying the predicate, saying the direct object, and asking to whom or for whom. So, girl handed flowers to whom? My mother and me. So, that's the indirect object, right? But it has two parts to it, mother and me. So in this sentence, we have a simple subject, a simple predicate, a simple direct object, and a compound indirect object. All right, and then one more kind of object we know of is an object of the preposition. Look at the next example. A girl handed me some flowers after the movie and the speech. So girl is the subject, handed is the predicate, flowers is the direct object, me is the indirect object. Those are all simple because there's only one part to each. But if we look at that prepositional phrase here, after the movie and the speech, that's a prepositional phrase. So the nouns or pronouns at the end are objects of the preposition. So we have two, movie and speech. After the movie, after the speech. So there's a compound indirect object here. All right, so that's the basic idea. We're going to come back in another video and practice a few. All right, thanks.